Tēnā koutou katoa, e mihi ana ki anai tahu te iwi mana whenua o konei. Ko te pokoko mataraka o, ko Stuart Brock, tōko ingoa, no reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Stuart Brock. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this very special occasion to celebrate the promotion of Liana Machado. I knew I was going to make that mistake, apologies for that, to Professor at the University of Otago. These lectures are a highlight of my week, and I'm sure they are of yours too. They are a wonderful opportunity for us to come together and listen to our new professors talk about their personal journeys, their research platform, and the impact their research has had on others. I'd like to welcome colleagues, students and friends from across the university and beyond, including those joining us tonight by live stream. And I'd like to give a special welcome to Liana's husband, Steve, who's joining us to celebrate with Liana tonight. It's not easy to become a professor at the University of Otago. In order to be promoted to that level, candidates need to show that they are outstanding in each of three categories: teaching, research, and service. Professor Machado has clearly met these criteria, and it's an honour and a privilege to congratulate her tonight for that outstanding achievement. And I hope you'll join me now in doing the same. And if I wasn't holding this microphone, I'd be clapping vigorously right now. So please, if you can help me out. Thank you. You'll have many more opportunities to do that tonight. Professor Machado grew up in California and attended Riverside Drive Elementary School, Millikan Junior High School and Grant High School, all of which are in Sherman Oaks, California, where Liana lived from age 5 until heading away to nearby UCLA. Professor Machado earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from UCLA in 1994 and her PhD in neuroscience from UC Davis in 1998. She then undertook postdoctoral research in the United Kingdom before joining the University of Otago in 2003. Over the past 2 decades, she's contributed extensively to the Department of Psychology and the Neuroscience program, rising through the ranks to professor in February early this year. Her research investigates mechanisms underlying cognitive functioning, the impact of ageing and brain disease on cognition, and methods to improve cognitive performance. Her work spans cognitive psychology, neuropsychology and neuroscience, and she's published extensively in high-impact international journals. Professor Machado's research has explored the effects of physical activity, diet and other lifestyle factors on brain health. Her recent studies include investigations into the cognitive effects of COVID-19 and interventions such as stair climbing and transcranial direct current stimulation. She's received numerous research grants and has collaborated with researchers across South America, Europe and Asia. She's supervised a large number of postgraduate students, many of whom have gone on to successful careers in academia. Her teaching includes undergraduate and postgraduate courses in cognition and neuropsychology, and she has coordinated multiple levels of neuroscience in the neuroscience program. In service, Professor Machado has held leadership roles within the university, including Director of the Neuroscience Program, PhD Program Director and member of the University Senate. She's served on national and international science advisory committees, reviewed for top journals and funding bodies, and contributed to public education through media appearances and public lectures. Tonight we celebrate Professor Machado not only for her academic achievements, but also for her dedication to improving cognitive health and her impact on students, colleagues, and the broader community. It's now time to hear from Professor Machado herself on cognition in health and disease. Please join me in welcoming Professor Liana Machado.
Kia ora koutou. Welcome, everybody. If I talk just like this, is that fine at the back? Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate everyone coming and enjoying this time with me and all the support. So I've been studying cognitive functioning for 35 years now, for so long that when I started studying cognitive functioning, people didn't know what cognition was, and I would always have to explain, well, I'm studying thinking abilities, trying to understand how people think. These days, I think cognitive and cognition are pretty normal words in the mental lexicon of most people, and people have a better understanding of how important cognition is. And how important it is to hold on to. So I'm hoping to be able to recap pretty quickly my last 35 years, just mostly kind of starting at the beginning of my research journey, and then talking about a few of the findings along the way. So thank you again for joining me. This is me, my brain, when I was in my late 20s, just before I came to University of Otago. But it's not here that my research journey started. My research journey really started at UCLA. Back in, 1989 technically, but my research journey started in 1990 when I took this paper, Cognitive Science, that was being taught by Nancy Kenwisher at UCLA. I really loved the topic, and I did really well in the paper. And back in those days, we didn't get our grades by the internet. We had grade cards, and they mailed them to you. And I guess I got the highest grade in the class or whatever, and she wrote on my grade card, "You should stop by my lab this summer." So I did, and she gave me a job. So I became her research assistant, my very first research supervisor, Nancy Kenwisher, and eventually her lab manager. And I have to say, I fell in love with research right away. It turned out I liked all aspects of research, absolutely loved analyzing data, programming, the whole shebang. So pretty much right away, I knew that was going to be my career. And so I started out trying to understand how cognitive processing works in healthy brains. At that time, again, we really didn't know much about cognition. Nancy was an absolutely wonderful supervisor, really just loves science and just has such an infectious enthusiasm for science. So it was a really great start for me. Although I should give a plug for my older brother, Steve. So this is my brother, Steve, who's 3 years older. And he was actually in his last year at UCLA when I started my first year. And I started as a chemistry major. But he was studying psychology, which I'd never basically heard of, because back in those days, you didn't learn anything about psychology at school. He sort of introduced me to the topic, and I ended up changing my major, which is how I ended up in Nancy Kenwisher's class to begin with. So that's sort of how it all began. Just coincidentally, last year, so this is my husband, Steve Walker. I know some of you know Steve Walker. He's here supporting me now. Thank you, honey. And we had the opportunity last year to head over to Seoul because one of the PhD students from way back then, who's now a professor at National University of Seoul, invited us and me to give a few talks while I was over there and come and check out Seoul, which was absolutely amazing. And I can definitely recommend the food and really everything else about the culture in case you get the opportunity. So that was a really cool opportunity. But at the end of my time in Nancy's lab, she actually headed off to the East Coast, to Harvard, and then on to MIT. But at the end of my time there, she recommended I work with a neurologist. And I know somebody in this room who knows this person. I don't know if everyone does. But Bob Raffel was an amazing neurologist who was about 5 hours north in California. So I made my way up. And we hit it off right away. And so I did my PhD under him. And he taught me about basically, I had to do a bit of a shift from understanding how cognition works in healthy brains to understanding how it changes when we damage our brains. And I focus on a combination of stroke, as well as on the impact of Parkinson's disease on cognition. Now, back then, Parkinson's disease was really thought to just be associated with motor symptoms. We didn't really know anything about the cognitive impact of Parkinson's disease. So it was quite exciting to be able to get in pretty early to start trying to understand how Parkinson's disease is impacting on cognition. And alongside neurologist Bob Raffel, there was another Bob, believe it or not, we called them the Bobs, another neurologist whose lab was next door, who also trained me. This is Bob Knight, and this is his wife, Donatella Scabini, who also helped me with my PhD research, trying to understand cognitive functioning in stroke patients. So they were really influential in the early parts of my career, and also just incredibly supportive. I really liked working with Bob so much that when he decided to shift to the UK, I decided to go with him. He invited me to do a postdoc in the UK. So off we went to Northwest Wales at Bangor University, where we developed together a patient panel. So I spent a lot of time back in those days at the hospital looking at brain scans and trying to identify patients that we thought we might be able to learn a little bit about how they've changed cognitively. And along the way, I met my husband. Along the way, I met my husband, Steve Walker. So we met in the mountains in Pakistan, and we traveled together. So this is back in 2001, before the World Trade Centers came down, before the Twin Towers came down. And we met in Pakistan, traveled across Afghanistan together, in Iran, and this is us a couple months later in Turkey. And then finally, some months later, in Glastonbury in England, where Steve lived at the time. And luckily, Glastonbury was only about a 5-hour drive, I think, from Northwest Wales, so we could continue the relationship. And Steve, needless to say, has been an amazing support for me throughout my journey. Don't want to get soppy, so I'll leave it there. This is our wedding day. As you can see, we're very casual people. The sign upside down did not have anything to do with us. I don't know why it was upside down. But this is highly unusual for me to be wearing anything other than exercise-ready clothing. And those of you who know a little bit about my research probably know why. Alongside amazing support from my husband, I have a rather large family. So here we have my father, and the rest of us, believe it or not, are his children. Lots of kids in my family, lots of support. This is my father, Tony, here and here. And he was actually a builder, so I do not come from a line of academics. This is my mother, Anita, and they both passed. But my mother, she actually dropped out of school at age 15. She comes from a family of 17. She was the 7th child and had 10 younger siblings, and her parents both needed to go to work to run the family business, so they needed her to stay home and take care of the 10 younger ones, and she did. So I don't come from a long line of academics, and yet somehow or other, we ended up with 2 professors in the family. So this is my oldest brother, and arguably a big part of why I ended up at UCLA originally was because he helped me with my application. He helped me write my cover letter, because I had really bombed out in high school the first year. So I got amazing grades after that, but I had terrible grades the first year of high school. And for the entrance into UCLA, they consider all the years of high school. So he helped me craft a really good letter, and I reckon that letter may have made a difference. So Tony later went on and did his PhD at UCLA. In toxicology, and he's a professor of environmental and occupational health in California. And this is my best friend, Naoko, best friend since we were young teenagers, who has been amazingly supportive alongside my family. And then, of course, there's my husband's family. So this is Steve Walker when, just before we came to New Zealand. His brother Mike's not in the photo because he was actually in New Zealand at the time. But this is Anne and Mick. Anne has passed, but Mick is still rooting on the sidelines for me, always asking me how it's going at the university, and I've really appreciated all the support. Okay, so finally in 2003, I got here. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of my research. When I first arrived here, I actually had to pretty much immediately change my research focus because I was primarily doing stroke research, and it wasn't possible to continue that due to the different structure of the hospital here. So I started studying aging, and in some ways that was kind of convenient. I mentioned that this is my brain when I was in my late 20s, but by the time I got here, I had just hit my 30s, and guess what? I'm 53 now, so it's been really good to switch to cognitive aging because I've been aging, and now I know a lot about how my cognition is changing and what I can do about it. So kind of convenient, actually. This is back then, just after, not long after I arrived. Some of my first students, this is Philippa Struthers. This is Natalie Wyatt, who went on to be my very first PhD student here. And just a few lab photos before I talk a little bit about some of the research. These are some lab group photos I'm going to show. And I just want to point out that all of my amazing students over the years are behind all of the research that I talk about, because none of it was possible without them, and of course the participants. And funders, of course, too. But everything I talk about is part of a big team effort. Not just the students, also sometimes help along the side, such as amazing research assistants who've been helping along the side. Okay, so I shifted to aging when I got here. I don't study early development, but I only study adults. But during early development, we have our cognitive functions really improving quickly over time. And most of our cognitive functions, the type of dynamic cognitive functions that I study, peak in our 20s. And already by your 30s, you can already start to see some decline. That's just how it works. It's part of natural aging. And alongside the declines in cognitive functioning that we see as we age, we also see deterioration of the brain. And that's just a normal part. I don't mean like, it all dies off or anything. I just mean, as you get older, well, there's some deterioration going on. Perfectly normal part of aging. So that's kind of where I shifted my focus initially to try to understand a little bit about how those cognitive functions are changing and how it interrelates to changes in the brain. One of the things that we researched was how your brain responds when you're engaging in cognitive tasks in relation to aging. And one of the things we found is that as you grow older, you change your brain patterns. So when doing the same kind of cognitive tests, your brain doesn't respond in the same way as it would have in your 20s. And what happens is you see a bit of an anterior shift. So brain activation moves a bit forward towards your forehead. And this is related to better performance. So not better performance overall. So we all looked at the graph a second ago. Okay, so it's not really better overall, but it's associated with helping you to maintain better than you might have otherwise had. So it's kind of a good thing, it seems, this change that we see with aging. And I just wanted to talk just briefly about some recent research that slightly ties in. So during the pandemic, we decided to take a look at the impact of having had or not had COVID-19 on cognitive functioning. So I was just going to quickly mention about this one study where we had people performing cognitive tests, and we did recordings from the brain, much like what I was talking about here, to look at their activation patterns. And what we saw actually is that there was a difference in people who had COVID-19 versus not. There was a difference when measuring from the forehead site. And when we looked a little closer, we saw that the difference is only in the right hemisphere. So only in the right hemisphere we saw a difference. The left hemisphere looks exactly like the controls, or people who didn't have COVID-19. And we don't know exactly what might be going on there. I'm actually hoping we don't replicate it, which is not usual for me. Usually I hope to replicate my findings, but in this case, I'd be fine to not replicate it. But the bright side of it is there was no clear evidence of a difference in cognitive performance. So it seemed like even those who had had brain fog, so 40% of the people who had COVID-19 reported that at the time they were suffering from brain fog. Now they've recovered, and we couldn't see obvious differences that they were struggling in terms of their cognitive performance, which is great. But we did see this one difference in terms of the brain blood flow patterns just in the right hemisphere, and we're going to follow it up to see if it replicates. It might not. That's science. We'll find out. But the bright side is we didn't see any obvious difficulties in terms of cognitive performance, so that's good. And the team following it up this year, who are here tonight, so feel free to ask them about it, are Abby, Nina, Allie, and Olivia. And not only are they interested in whether we replicate this pattern that looked different in the right hemisphere when people have had COVID before, but they're also interested in finding out whether certain people might be a little more vulnerable. For example, if you have a chronic condition such as depression, anxiety, or chronic inflammation, might it be the case that you're showing some lasting effects of COVID-19 that other people might not be showing? So they're also looking into potential vulnerabilities. So we should have some results, hopefully, within the year. I also wanted to mention another study that's related to the pandemic and was conducted by Neda, who is here tonight, and was doing her PhD in my lab at the time, but has now gone on to a postdoc. And she was interested in how wearing a face mask might impact on cognition. Because at the time, we were all asked to wear a face mask. It was actually just before we were asked, so that's why she could run the study. But it was already that people were asked overseas, so we knew it was coming. And so before we were actually asked to wear them ourselves, she jumped in and ran a study where she asked people to wear a face mask for the entire day, and then on another occasion, don't wear a face mask. So these are people who don't normally wear a face mask, and they just wore it for the whole day, and then they came into the lab and did cognitive testing, and on another day, they did cognitive testing without wearing it. And what she found was, although overall, you can see that numerically, it seems like people didn't perform quite as well, so below this line indicates numerically worse performance. But it was only for one of several cognitive measures where people performed significantly worse. So there was quite limited evidence that wearing the mask for the whole day was really having a negative impact. It's possible that there's a little bit there, as I say, but nothing really substantial. But people did say that while wearing the mask, they felt less happy and more tense. And in fact, when she looked a little closer at the cognitive data, Neda also found that it seemed like people who felt more anxious wearing the mask seemed to be struggling a little more on a cognitive level. So that makes us realize that everybody's different, and some people may have more vulnerabilities than others, and it might be impacted more by wearing a mask. You can imagine, for example, if you already have an anxiety condition, it's possible that that might exacerbate something. Or if you're already suffering from cognitive decline, then it might be that you're more vulnerable. So that's something we'd like to try to follow up in the future. I just wanted to also mention about my student who was doing his PhD at the same time in the lab Dr. Ari Alex Ramos, who went on to Brazil to do his postdoc, and has been amazing. We've continued to collaborate and has really helped me to grow my research network in Brazil, which has been fantastic. And he's been doing some really good work in the space of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as dementia. So trying to understand a little bit more about some of those risk factors that lead to cognitive decline, as well as what some of the protective factors might be to try to have better outcomes. Okay, so after quite some years of studying all the things that could go wrong in the brain, things that go wrong as we grow older, things that go wrong if we have brain disease, I started to try to focus on something a little more positive. What can we do about this? So back in 2010, I started a new line of research where we would trying to figure out what are some of the things we can do to try to improve our cognitive functioning. And I've tried a number of things along the way. Brain stimulation was mentioned. But where we've seen the most positive impact has been related to exercise or engaging in physical activity. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of those results. In the early days, we found relationships between chronic engagement and physical activity, better vascular functioning, so better brain blood flow, basically, and better cognitive performance. So that was an exciting initial start that got us interested. And fortunately, the ODT, the local media, was interested as well. And that was quite exciting because sometimes as researchers, we feel like we're doing all this research in our lab, and it's not easily reaching the people. Not surprisingly, most non-academics don't turn to academic journals for fun. So it was really good to get media involved in some of this research. Some of the things we found along the way is that, that the exercise cognition benefits I'm talking about aren't restricted to higher intensity physical activity. So for example, we've seen evidence of benefits even in relation to things like brisk walking. So for people who feel like, climbing a mountain's a little bit more than what I wanted to engage in, it's really good to know that even just regular brisk walking can be really helpful. We also found that older adults tend to benefit more. So that's really encouraging because we know about cognitive decline with aging. That's a normal part of aging. So it's great to hear, to find out that older adults can benefit even more, which is great. Also, on a similar vein, is in your older age, this is work done actually by Andreas Stenling, who did a postdoc in my lab from Sweden. And also we found that when you're older, it's more about what you're doing now than what you were doing when you were younger, which is encouraging because some people may feel like, well, I was quite sedentary for some years, and is it worth bothering now? Is it too late? Or, And I think the answer is yes, it is worth it, because it seems to be really more about what you're doing now than necessarily what you were doing before. So how do we do in New Zealand in terms of physical activity? This is research by Hayley Guinea, who did a PhD in my lab some years back. And at that time, how are we doing? So what are our physical activity guidelines? We're supposed to be engaging in at least 30 minutes, at least 5 days a week. But how many people meet that? If you're just looking at older adults, so this is age 60 plus, it's actually less than half. And especially that's true of females. And you kind of see this across data sets that females tend to engage in even less physical activity than males. But really, people are just not good at meeting that minimum amount of recommended physical activity. And unfortunately, over 20% at that time were considered inactive, meaning less than 30 minutes physical activity per week. So we became very keen in trying to shift people from inactive to at least engaging in some exercise or as close as possible to meeting the minimum recommendations. And so in the interim, I got exposed to randomized control trial research through Paul Glue in PsychMed and Catherine Black in Human Nutrition. And it actually married quite well with my training in cognitive psychology. So I thought, okay, we can do this. So we decided, okay, well, let's start with some intervention work here. So this is Emily Fulton demonstrating some interval stair climbing that we started out with. I apologize to everyone in the building who got disrupted with our stair climbing. But we thought, okay, well, we know that a big barrier to exercise is time. People always say I don't have enough time. So let's make it something that you can do fairly quickly. So we went with interval stair climbing. So the whole thing just takes about 10 minutes. But the real exercise, that rapid stair climbing, although not everyone did it quite that quickly, so you're basically supposed to do it as quickly as you can without injuring yourself. So safety first, but beyond that, you climb this up and down the stairs as quickly as you can. But just in 3 one-minute intervals. So not actually all that time consuming, even though the whole thing takes about 10 minutes. And what you find, of course, is heart rate goes up over those minutes. But what we found in our early research with this intervention in university students is that when it came to cognitive benefits, 3 one-minute intervals was not enough for a lot of people. We did see some benefits, but it wasn't like that robust across all the people. So we doubled it and went with 6 one-minute intervals. And what we found was with 6 one-minute intervals, we saw cognitive benefits in both young adults and older adults. So we also tested people in their 60s and 70s, and found that they could benefit on a cognitive level too. In fact, Neda, who's here, worked on that randomized control trial. I'm not sure if there are others in this team here. I don't think so. But this is the whole team on these randomized control trials. And one of the things we saw that improved was mental flexibility, which I know is something that people like to work on. And even for the 3 1-minute intervals, the mood benefits were really good in the young adults, not in the older adults. So I'll explain that in a second. So with young adults, if you did the 3 1-minute or you did the 6 1-minute, people generally reported feeling more energetic afterward, happier, less tired, and less tense. Older adults, though, we only had them do the 6 1-minute intervals because it seemed to be more effective in young adults, and I think we might have pushed them too hard. So they seemed to show the cognitive benefits, but perhaps not surprisingly, they didn't feel more energetic at the end. I think they were a bit knackered. So if I could run that study again, I'd probably take it back to 3 1-minute intervals for older adults, but anyway. We were really happy to see that people felt less tense after the stair climbing because in our other young adult research, we found that young females in particular tend to have feelings of more tense. You see this sex difference where females of university age tend to feel more tense. And that sex difference did go away. So you don't see it in older adults, but we were particularly excited about the prospect of helping young female university students to reduce those feelings. In terms of how New Zealand is doing more recently, it's actually gotten worse, not better. So if you look at, now we're not looking just at older adults, we're looking at age 15 plus. So as you get older, most people actually drop off their physical activity levels. It's not something that you have to do, it's just something that people tend to do. So now we're looking at a larger group, but even when you include right down to 15-year-olds, we still find that more than half are engaging in insufficient physical activity, meaning you're not making that at least 30 minutes, at least 5 days a week minimum recommendation. And as I said, it's been tending to get worse over the years, not better. And if you look more globally, New Zealand placed 13th worst out of 161 countries in this 2018 study. So I was really over the moon when the exercise facility opened, connecting where I live in Port Chalmers, where we live in Port Chalmers, to the university and Dunedin more broadly. One of the barriers to regular engagement exercise I mentioned is time. So it's really good if you can incorporate something into your normal daily activities, because otherwise it's more likely that you won't get around to it. So being able to use this path to get to work was great for me. That's my nephew Blake when he visited from the UK. Another thing is just generally having nearby free accessible facilities. So I'm really hoping with this very amazing path that, as you can see, that's actually my husband's bike in the winter, but I use it too. Even in the winter, you can use this path, and I'm really hoping that Dunedin can buck the trend. I know the trends haven't been great in New Zealand in terms of people meeting their physical activity, but with facilities like this, I think we may have the prospect of doing well locally, so I'm hoping it makes a difference. And this is actually really important because it's actually pretty well known now that physical inactivity is a risk factor for a number of neurological diseases, including stroke and Parkinson's disease, as well as Alzheimer's disease that's linked to dementia. And if you engage in regular physical activity, you can reduce your risk factor for stroke, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, as well as some other neurological diseases that I didn't mention. So definitely a good thing to do. Okay, so I just wanted to, at the end, talk a little bit about some of the current research in my lab. I already mentioned about the COVID-19 study that we have going on, but this is Ashley Berryman, who is also here tonight. Oops, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong direction. And she's in the last year of her PhD, and she has spent the last few years really trying to understand women with endometriosis have been self-reporting cognitive difficulties, and there just hadn't been any objective data on what's going on. So she just spent the last couple of years trying to characterize not just how endometriosis appears to be affecting people in terms of their cognitive performance, but also looking for neuromarkers of change, with the idea being that now as she's finishing up her PhD soon, she can move into some intervention work to try to help. So for her postdoc research, she's hoping to develop some interventions that might help women with endometriosis with these difficulties. So well done, Ashley. And Gabe, who just arrived and is just starting her PhD journey, and she's also interested in something that interrelates with pain and cognitive functioning, but her focus is on musculoskeletal pain. So I think all of us have experienced musculoskeletal pain, and we hope that it's relatively transient, but some people suffer from chronic musculoskeletal pain, and I'm sure there are some people in this room who do. And she's wanting to try to understand how this is impacting on brain functioning in terms of both cognition as well as neuromarkers such as through electroencephalography, so recording with electrodes on your brain. And she's also hoping to develop some effective interventions to help people. So that will be exciting, and we might have something to say in a few years' time. And then finally, Janica also just joined the lab, and she has an interest in aphantasia. I'm guessing most people in the room probably haven't heard of aphantasia. I personally am a very visual person. So if I imagine anything, it's very visual. That's just how I am. And I think a lot of people are quite visual, but some people aren't. So some people, when they try to conjure up a mental representation of something, it's not visual in nature. And that's what aphantasia is. So she's interested in, we can talk about what our representations, for example, if you imagine a Kia, for me, it's quite visual in nature. So one of the things she wants to try to figure out is, well, what is the nature of the mental representation if it's not visual in nature? If you have aphantasia and you don't engage in visual imagery, what's the nature of the representation? And how might these differences, by not having visual imagery, impact on your day-to-day cognition? So that's what she's going to be embarking on for her master's degree. And I also want to say, thank you so much, if I have any participants in the room, which I wouldn't be surprised if there might be, to everybody who's participated in research in my lab. That's been amazing, and I really appreciate it. Big shout out to all the funders, including the University of Otago, that's been very generous over the years, and to all of the student collaborators. I couldn't list everybody's name. I've been here for over 20 years. I started listing as many as I could, and then I ran out of space. But I've had such a large number of amazing students, and a big thank you also for coming. So thank you very much.
Kia ora koutou, folks. This is going to be bloody hard to follow, so well done, you. And don't panic as I open this up, and excuse the Chuck Schumer look from me, by the way. I've been given 5 minutes, and I promise I'll try not to go beyond that. I literally wrote some notes down more because I'm intent when I speak not to trail into any talk of elections, and as I look around the room. So if I do start talking about the Resource Management Act, Three Waters, or God forbid parking, please somebody throw something at me. And I just want to acknowledge Marila Fiso up here, Christine Gary, and Jet Grushinsky, who's running in this election. And just be warned, young man, I used to have hair, so look, you'll see what happens to you. It'll disappear if you do become a politician. Anyway, wasn't that awesome? Wasn't that absolutely amazing? I've been married to Liana for 23 years, and to be honest, I didn't have a bloody clue what you did, so that's pretty impressive. And also, I've been to multiple IPLs. I often come to them because they're just amazing, but I've never actually been to one where a spouse decides to come and talk. So I don't really know what the rules are, so just cut me cut me some slack, please. And by the way, you guys, when the invitation came through, you do realize if you're inviting a politician to speak for 5 minutes in front of a crowd on the day the voting papers go out, you're only going to get one answer. That's it for politics. If Grant was here, he'd understand what I'm saying. I really wanted to take this opportunity to thank the University of Otago, actually, and in particular the psychology department, for taking a chance on us over 20 years ago. And when I say taking a chance on us, I don't mean her, she's brilliant. I mean taking a chance on me, and I'll come to that in a moment. When we came for the job interview in 2002, it wasn't until a few years after the interview dinner, at which I remember Bob Knight ordered way too much wine, the good old days before fiscally things got tight. It dawned on me afterwards why I was being questioned so much about wanting to come to New Zealand. At that point, I had no idea, to be honest, when I was asked what I would do here. I actually literally came here to retire and do the cooking and the gardening. It lasted about a month. And the concern, I guess, from the questioning, and rightly so, was that concern that we'd move across the other side of the world, I wouldn't find a place, get a job, be comfortable, and then I'd insist that we pack up and go back to the UK or the USA. Certainly wouldn't want to be there now. And that does happen, and it's a real issue, and I presume it's still an ongoing issue for the department. But thinking back through it, if I'd said at that dinner, don't worry about me, I'm going to become a city councillor, a justice of the peace, a resource management commissioner, I'm going to be instrumental in getting a $55 million shared path to Port Chalmers, I was going to be involved in setting up a wildlife hospital, you'd have probably started about thinking about not giving her the job, not because she's not good, because I'm a bit of a nutter. And it happened, so there we go. And here we are now, and I just want to pass on my heartfelt thanks to those people at that dinner who made me feel welcome. And I don't know how many people are here, but you're here, Cliff, and you were at that dinner. You did have quite a bit of wine, actually. You were at that dinner, and Bob was there, Brent and Tamar, who's sadly passed, Liz and Janice, and I think Jackie, and if there's anybody here I missed, you were amazing and made me feel really welcome. And also some of those newer people in the department who I've gotten to know. And just in closing, it sounds like a politician and an academic living together. It just sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like either the start of a joke, like politician and an academic walk into a bar, but it sounds like living together would be a nightmare, but it amazingly works well for us. And I think it's partly, could be because we have no children, but partly because we don't actually talk much at home about our work. And I certainly don't, because in my job I get a lot of grief. That's unfortunate, but it does work. And in closing, I need to say, I mean, University of Otago, you're lucky to have this amazing human being. She has so many tremendous qualities, although I can still absolutely kill her cycling up a hill. That's separate. But I think, and I don't want this to sound like a funeral, but I think if I describe my wife in one word, it's kind. Thank you.
So I'm here to kind of thank Liana for her wonderful presentation and all the work that she's been doing for the Department of Psychology and the University of Otago. You would have seen easily, coming through her talk, the excellence of her research, the impactful nature of it, and the importance of it for society, actually. I know I would be preaching to the choir if I were to say that brain health and good cognition is the most important thing that society faces and needs. In order for this to be spread as widely as possible across society, in order for us to solve all the other problems in society. So that's my rant for this presentation. And Liana personifies all those interests in that work in her own research endeavors. I was actually just starting as head of department when Liana arrived. And so those are back in the days when, onboarding wasn't a term that I was familiar with. But she jumped on board the good ship psychology department without any of those programs of helpfulness to get someone started. And obviously some of her quality just jumped right into the job, started the teaching, the research, attracting students. And so this is what happens when you employ and recruit high quality academics. They just get on with the job. Which is not to say onboarding is a terrible thing, but it hasn't always been needed in order for people to succeed. I think one of the, coming back to this issue of brain health, we can all sit here and say, oh yeah, that's a good thing. But how do we do it? And you need evidence-based information in order for there to be impactful interventions. And what we saw from Liana is a lot of excellent suggestions and experiments to look at what that evidence might look like to help people. Let me tell you, Liana, that at 53, you're still a spring chicken compared to some of us. Those of us who are actually aging really appreciate your focus on improving the cognition of older people. The other thing I can say, apart from her many contributions to the university or service that we've heard about, contributions to the neuroscience program, is I have in-depth understanding of her support of students in her lab. You see, after we moved into the William James building, we ended up with side-by-side offices. And in the summertime in particular, with our windows open, it's very easy to eavesdrop on the conversations between supervisors and students. Now, I don't know what she thinks about my meetings with my students, but I can assure you that she has wonderful engagement with her students and supports them, builds them up, and while also challenging them as well. And she puts me to shame, actually, because when I was looking at her CV, actually I already knew this, all her PhD students get done in 3 years. I mean, it's like, I don't think any PhD students in my lab has gotten done in 3 years. So I don't know how you've done it, but you do it. And not only that, but on top of that, she's always supporting them to get their work published, which is very important in academia, of course, and for everyone else to learn about the work that's being done. The other thing that she's been really good at, just to finish, is communicating her results and the findings to the public. I've seen her in various fora doing this, and in fact, it's actually had an impact on me. Because we were on a panel together once, and I was hearing about the wonders of red foods. And if you go to the staff club and ask the staff there what Cliff Abram often gets for lunch, the beetroot salad will come up. I never got to the beetroot bread idea, sorry, but hopefully my brain health is being helped by Liana's suggestions. So that's it for me. Namihi nui, Liana, for a wonderful lecture, for all the contributions you've been making to the university and the department. And once again, let's thank her for her excellent presentation. But wait, there's more. We have a little token of appreciation to give to you, Liana, on behalf of the university.